You are such a buffoon. It's an embarrassment that I even agreed to do this show.
That whole civil rights movement was about taking over the hearts and minds of the black.
So let me get this right. To Jesse and all of his listeners right now, let me make an announcement. So to Jesse, Martin Luther King is a zero, but Donald Trump is the great white hope. You are a moron, Jesse. You're a moron and you are brainwashed. Don't Brian me. You're a moron is what you are. And I can't wait to post this on social media to show everybody what an idiot you actually are. Martin Luther King is a zero, but Donald Trump is the great white hope. You are an imbecile and you are Donald Trump's base. Extremely stupid people. You have an IQ of like 20.
Nobody touches us at all. Shout out, shoot out, spread fear of it without us. Living that attack, what's off the wheel? Spread the word throughout the land. They say, bad guys, we're black. We're taking cancer, you see us coming and you all together but for cover. We'll take it over this town. Hell and now, reach for your gun and you better listen well. I'm afraid to see it's best now, down below. Aim at you and the colors of hell. Tears down again, we want. They talking no tall tales, but it's just I knew you're doomed. Jump in the air with the colors of hell.
Okay, I had to start it off in epic fashion because, my God, this is not exactly, well, hold on just a second. We're having, once again, just a second, let me see if I can, that should do. I think that, yeah, there we go. A little bit more? Yeah, a little bit more. That should do it. Yep, that'll do it. That'll do it. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. But, well, it's unfortunately pretty embarrassing because if you guys were here on the last time I attempted to do this, it did not go according to plan, to say the least. And well, I'm gonna get the somber stuff out of the way first because this has been an absolute nightmare that started with a very, very small problem that really shouldn't have been anywhere near the level that it became, but nevertheless, through a series of events that were partly due to my own fault and partly due to just really shitty timing for certain releases to come out for things like patches, updates, things like that. And also a huge number of what would you call them? Just complete brain fart lapses where I just would go and completely forget what it was that I did to set something up. It was, oh man. So just to kind of give a quick timeline of events, this all started based on a an update from Ableton, which, if you're unaware, Ableton is a digital audio workstation, usually used for recording, but it, in case anyone out there is interested in this sort of thing, Ableton Live is probably, in my opinion, the best DAW that will work as a live streaming sort of platform to use as a staging area for things like audio plugins for different adjustments and effects. It's excellent for getting not just vocals, but if you're doing even instruments of any kind, if you're doing vocals of like multiple singers at the same time, if you're doing anything like that, it's predominantly meant as music software, but it has crossed into the area of doing live streaming, and was one of the biggest uses, interestingly, is for recording and live streaming church services for church bands and worship groups. It's actually very, very user-friendly and very effective for that type of setting. And there are very few applications that actually work that way. Most of them are either. Oh, I see what's wrong. Hold on just a second. Okay, I think that should do it. Yeah, that did it. Now I need to turn down the gain a little bit. That fuzz was getting to me. It's still there a little bit, but I don't think it's as bad. Anyway, if it's sounding a little choppy, let me know, because I'm trying to. Man, this is still very much on a wire, but I can't stand it anymore. This has been way too long. There's way too much. It didn't help that there was way too much stuff happening. Anyway, this update for Ableton just so happened to coincide with the self-admitted issue that was between them and what just also so happens to be both my audio interface and my two audio control surfaces from Solid State Logic. And as much as I love Solid State Logic and I've never had any issues with them, this suddenly came up, and there was an issue with the communication between the two, which would have been easy to work around. However, it was more than just that was being caused by the issue. There was just a total communication issue between Solid State Logic, which operates with its own software, and Ableton. Come off of that, thinking that after about a week and a half or so that I finally got everything working right, and lo and behold, then I get a camera issue, which, after troubleshooting it out, it wasn't the cameras, it wasn't anything that I could see that was it was really easy to discern. And the only wild guess I could take, there's two basically issues that I ended up being convinced it is going to be one or the other. I was either going to be able to do it by having to shut down the computer and do a hard reset, which was essentially shutting down the computer and either turning off and just leaving off, or shutting off and unplugging the power supply, just as long as there's no direct power going to it, even while it's shut down. And the other is I would have had to take out my capture card for my camera setup and replug that into a different PCI Express rail slot, which would have been even more trouble. Luckily, as you can guess, that wasn't the issue. It was just a reset issue, but that was like the final thing on the list of things to do. But that was like 3 days ago. And since then, there's been just small little issue after small little issue, and if you guys remember the last time I went on to do a stream and I just completely face planted on that one, not literally but metaphorically, um, there was an issue with audio coming in from well, it wasn't even just audio, it was the video itself, I think, but mostly the audio, I think, was the problem. Where I was not getting any sound from any kind of application on the desktop, not even videos I was playing that were directly on desktop. This was something I was like, okay, I got to avoid that, so I got to make sure everything's working. And whether it was that or whether it was intro videos not playing or suddenly the microphone not working again, there was this was the most frustrating experience for dealing with anything audio video related I've had in a very long time. And then to compound the whole thing, if you guys have been paying attention, I'm sure, to what's been going on in the last few weeks, there's been so much stuff that I've wanted to comment on, and I'm sitting here like, well, as soon as I get the show going again, I guess I'll be able to do it, but until then I got to fix it. And every single time I must have been fully convinced about 5 times now that I was fully prepared and ready to go, and then sat down and found out, wait, oh, this isn't working. Oh, wait, now this doesn't work. And by today, I was like, the reason I'm on so late is because, once again, that came up. And this time it was for something so freaking stupid that I should have been able to point it out, but I was so fucking flustered and, well, you guys know. I've talked about my issues with panic disorder before. This was really getting into territory where I was getting such a high level of anxiety every time something went wrong that I was this was probably the closest I was on the verge of saying, how am I can't do this anymore if I can't even figure out something as simple as this. It sounds ridiculous, but I mean, in the position I was in, it was just like how is it that we've done this show? And granted, I know there's no consistency at all in my schedule. I get that. But there's a difference between no consistency and no show. And you guys, I've told you a million times, is almost every time I do a show that I'm doing the best I can to do as many shows as I can in a given week. And I'm trying to do better, but this was a level where it's like, okay, if we're at 2.5 weeks, I've got one attempted show that failed miserably, and that's all I have to show for it. What is going on here? And I was so incredibly depressed. I was about to say, screw it, I can't do the show anymore. Luckily, that wasn't quite the ending of the story, and honestly, when I got it working to the point that I realized, okay, everything's good, it wasn't even like an exciting moment. It wasn't like, yes, okay, thank God that's done. It's like, yay, okay, great, wow, what a wonderful use of my time. Now I got to try and figure out how in the hell I'm going to do a show. But as I was saying, the reason I'm doing a show, and it's even on the West Coast, 1:30 a.m., is because, damn it, I'm doing a fucking show tonight, and I'm not letting that stop me anymore. I haven't done a show in too long, and we're not going to get into the deep stuff in this one. There's a lot of more surface level stuff, especially considering people, including the guy who was in the intro video there, who has been quite the big-mouthed. Well, we'll get there, but my lord, have there been some insufferable fucking leftists lately? They are they somehow think that they are in a position of leverage enough to act like there is not really anything they can do that is going to be such a negative effect that it will tank their chances in upcoming elections. I seem to think differently. Somehow, call me crazy, but when you have people, same group of people probably that were cheering when Charlie Kirk was murdered, now coming out to make a video. It's amazing that people do this, that they rush to a camera every time there's an assassination attempt on the President of the United States. And they're not concerned about the life of the president. They're not concerned about the shape of the country. They're not concerned about the man's family. They're not concerned about what would happen to the parties if that was to happen. They couldn't care less. They are so absolutely, completely focused on the fact that they hate Donald Trump that their first instinct is to run to social media and post a video expressing their anger that the assassin failed at killing Donald Trump. That's where we've made it now. We've made it to the point where when there's a successful assassination, leftists are cheering, and when there's a non-successful assassination, they are crying and whining and angry and pissed and saying somebody needs to do it, like a bunch of little bitches, but very, very, very dangerous little bitches. There's nothing normal about this. There's nothing excusable about this. This is not the behavior of people who are adjusted adults that are prepared to deal with, the struggles of everyday life. These are people who, they're not stupid. They're just people who have grown up all their lives with everything, number one, pretty much being, first of all, they've probably been coddled pretty much their whole lives. Even the ones that are like in their late 30s or early 40s that are pretending like they have their lives in order when they probably are anything but. Sorry, I'm thirsty. Anyway, but these are not well-adjusted, mentally sound people. These are people with something seriously wrong with them that is like so far beyond any kind of political normal attitude that we've seen from any political party in this country since the founding, aside from the Civil War, where we're literally at war with each other, so it kind of makes sense that there would be some some attacks and attempts to murder others. But oh man, oh no, don't get hiccups. But oh no, I think I'm fine. But in this case, once again, it's pronounced even stronger by the fact that where are they when they do? Well, they're on social media. And there's two ironies here to that situation. Number one, they obviously are not doing so terrible. I mean, they're so angry about Iran and what Donald Trump is doing in Iran. It was their government that turned off the internet to the entire country of Iran, and it's been off, I think, for 45 days in the country. So that had nothing to do with Trump or the dreaded Benjamin Netanyahu. No, that had entirely and exclusively to do with the Iranian government. So that's number one. And number two, their whole shtick about how the fascist authoritarian who's just looking to end free speech and throw us all into concentration camps. You sure seem to be running around saying that a lot for someone who's scared of the consequences of this authoritarian dictator who's going to throw you all in concentration. Like, doesn't it kind of undermine the theory when you have like post after post, and don't even try to tell me that this is like there's just so many. No, it's not about the volume. If this was a real authoritarian government, that would be even better. They would be able to round up everybody in a certain area. You think they can't figure that out? You think the CIA and the FBI and the intelligence agencies can't figure it out? They figure it out They figured out when that guy was leaking the military secrets in the last administration, and went to his house, and he was like 19 years old and trying to impress some dumb broad, and and yeah. So, point being that, like, what is it that is so threatening? Well, nothing really, but they have no other political ambition, no other argument. I've got a great clip to play for this in just a second, but it's mind-blowing because I'm not going to go too far. Like I said, I don't want to get into the really big topics today. We'll save those for the next episode because I don't know how long this was going to go for, number one. Number two, it's really informal. And number three, I'm really trying to just make sure that everything's working, and even if things are a little rough around the edges and a little need to be polished a little bit, that's the other point, is to make sure that by the next episode everything's 100% solid and ready to go. By the way, I hope you guys like my new opening. I still have a couple things to do to kind of finish it off, but I was really happy with it. So if you guys were digging it, let me know. But on the subject of these kind of lunatics, these lunatics that I'm talking about. So I've been watching, with the change of perspective, I guess, or with the sort of, let's just call it heel turn of people like Tucker Carlson, people unfortunately like Megyn Kelly, and people like well, I was really I never really listened to Candace Owens. I was really surprised about Alex Jones, but then again, maybe not so much. But since then, I've really kind of shrunk my well, maybe not shrunk, but I've kind of condensed the people I used to listen to, and I've branched out to some people that I used to listen to a little bit, and now I'm listening to them a lot more and kind of getting some deeper and more better insights into the perspectives of people that I hadn't really given as much time to before, and I'm finding out, like, wow, these people, man, these guys have got some good ideas. Okay, because there's no doubt that like, let me just caveat this, and I don't want to get too far into this once again, but first off, obviously, nobody wants to go to war. Trump doesn't want to go to war, I guarantee you. And like, regardless of what you might think of any Western leader, or what you might think of Benjamin Netanyahu, what you might think of whoever, nobody wants to be fighting in a war. But there's times when there's a reason for it, and I would be the first person to say that, once again, I've said this before, after 9/11, I thought the attack on Afghanistan was totally predictable, and that was absolutely the right thing to do, considering that was where the alleged mastermind of the 9/11 attacks was supposed to be located. Some seemed really kind of skeptical from the get-go, though, considering how there just wasn't a lot of information about Afghanistan right from the get-go. It seemed like there was this very slow and non-aggressive sort of effort to look like they were trying to find bin Laden or looked like they were trying to bring justice for 9/11, when something felt off, and then it all kind of made sense when all of a sudden we suddenly shift gears to Iraq, and that was when everybody, including me, who had been skeptical before, was like, okay, what are we doing now? I'll never forget the day too, watching when I don't think I've ever even told this story before. I remember watching. I can't remember who it was, but there was morning AM radio that I used to listen to when I was working. The very first job I was working, as a matter of fact, and before I would leave in the morning, they had a TV show, and then they would also have the, when I got to work, I'd listen to them on the radio. And I remember waking up this morning, and they were watching a video of the U.S. soldiers with a tank with chains and rope tied to this big statue of Saddam Hussein in the middle of Iraq, and they were they were like pulling the statue down, and they were just talking about how, wow, what a fantastic day for democracy, and I was like, because they're tearing a statue down. This is a great day for democracy. Well, I mean, symbolically, it's kind of, I guess, good, but like, this is what are the Iraqis really gonna, rejoice over this, or is like what is this gonna do for them? Is it gonna do anything, or no? Of course not. But that, and once again, it blows my mind that people look back and have not nearly as much to say so negative about someone like George Bush, even though they do on occasion now, because they kind of have to compare how it was terrible when George Bush got us into Iraq, and yet they never go off on George Bush, of course, at all. Not like they do on Donald Trump, who has, on the tail end of getting peace treaties and ending conflicts in our own region and around the world, goes in to prevent a country that is openly and constantly attempting to develop the weaponry that would be necessary to attack us or to render us no longer a threat, at least to their regime and their expansion into the rest of the Middle East. There's a strange idea that I don't know how it's rationalized, but it's like, first of all, they're not at all the same. There's nothing at all the same of these two operations, other than the American military is in the Middle East attacking a government under the control of a Islamic fundamentalist group that is a terrorist organization, or in this case, the funders of pretty much all the terrorist organizations in the region. But this is a conflict and a outcome that has been talked about and said, and has been said it was the most desired outcome to come about in the last 47 years, including by presidents like Clinton and Bush and Obama, and I think even Biden, that we need to make sure Iran never gets a nuke. We need to make sure that we render Iran no longer capable of harming its neighbors or causing terror in the region. And Trump comes in and says, yeah, we need to do that. All right, let's do it. And everyone flips their shit and goes wild and says, well, how dare you? He's not following the War Powers Act. It's like, okay, do you want it to happen or not? Because this is what I heard today, and it was just so perfect. It's like, you know what happened in North Korea, right? We didn't attack in time. We kind of tiptoed around and tiptoed through the tulips, and we didn't really, we didn't really treat it with the same sort of respect that we should have. And the North Koreans who currently live on grasshoppers and grass, um, except for, of course, their leaders who live in mansions and um, who despite the fact that it ended up blocking up so much water they couldn't effectively farm rice anymore, and it plunged the country into a huge famine. They still have to praise the great leader and the cabinet for this giant dam that they created, because it's such a marvel of craftsmanship and ingenuity. And so, yeah, once again, it's a massive fucking problem, because they can't, one of the most important crops that is possible to farm in the country, rice, is far more difficult to farm now because they don't have the irrigation and the water necessary, because there's a dam blocking it all. But God forbid you say anything like that in North Korea, because they'll kill you. I don't think Donald Trump would do that if you criticize, anything. I haven't seen any proof of that at all. And once again, what happened with that country, even though they're silly as hell and willing to do that, we ended up in a situation where we waited too long, we were too slow with the attack, and they ended up getting a stockpile of ballistic missiles and nuclear capabilities. And at that point, it was pretty much checkmate, game over. We can maintain a presence in South Korea, but you're not getting North Korea to surrender its nuclear weaponry now. And so that was North Korea. Now think about what happens if it's Iran we're talking about here. Because what has Iran done already that we know about that is pretty scary when you think about what they would do if they had a nuclear weapon. Well, what did they do to start everything off? Well, they took over, 1,000 Americans hostage in our embassy when they first began the freaking takeover of Iran. Like when Iran became Iran, and the Ayatollah Khomeini instead of Khomeini, real creative there. When they came in and it was a Carter administration, so they weren't worried about him at all. Kind of reminds you of something, doesn't it? Like something recent that is a nice little parallel between what's happening now and what happened then. Kind of interesting, isn't it? But side note. But anyway, so we know that they had no issue whatsoever taking Americans hostage, torturing American citizens. They have now Reagan got them to release all the hostages a year and a half later, I think, after he took the hostages. And on top of that, this was just a situation where Jimmy Carter got shat on all over the place, because what happened? Well, he tried. I was reminded of this today. There was a rescue operation planned, and he once again, displayed the total incompetence of leadership at the time by flying these helicopters, which were nowhere near prepared for the trip that they were supposed to be, like the distance they were supposed to be going. The engines started overheating in two of them on the way there, and they had to break off and go back. When they got there, one of the engines was overheating and scared the hell out of some of the pilots so bad they tried to take off, only to crash into one of the other ones that was above them. It was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster. And, you want to talk about an embarrassment. That was one thing that made us a laughingstock, not just in front of Iran, but to the rest of the world. And I can just, for all the praise that everybody on the left wants to give Biden for his steady-handed leadership and his statesman's-like approach to diplomacy, yeah, that got us real far, didn't it? Yeah, because guess what? You know what else Iran did? They lied about their ballistic missile capability. So they can already reach France. They can already reach London, from what it seems like they can do. And here's the point, and this is what was being discussed when I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. How long, if we had left them alone, if we had just said, okay, we took out Fordo, we took out their nuclear sites, we took out their enriched uranium sites, job's done, we don't have to worry about them anymore. And they were still defiantly saying, no, we're going to make a nuke. Meanwhile, at the same time, they're not saying this. No one in the population is talking about this because if they listen to mainstream media, they obviously are going to have no idea about any of this, and they're not going to care if you bring it up. But what happens when they stockpile a shit ton of ballistic missiles, and instead of going in there after Israel has taken out their air defense sites and their defensive capabilities are drastically diminished, if instead they have a massive stockpile of just conventional missiles, ones which, by the way, once again, they have lied before about the capabilities of, who's to say they'll lie next time? They don't lie next time about, say, the power of these weapons or their ability to track a target, or like what kinds of capabilities are we talking about here? Because we know we can't trust them. We know that they've lied over and over again. We know that they don't really care at all about anything other than attempting to establish this great Islamic caliphate that is going to lead to global jihad. And like it's just like you either attack the enemy you know right now in the moment, who's weakened, who's demoralized, whose people are unsettled, like completely unhappy with them, who are not going to be like, they're not just going to go willingly along with this, and they've been executed for it. Now, I don't know. I hope that at some point they really do have the urge to fight. I don't know. I'm not obviously in the area or an Iranian, obviously, so I can't say like what it is that's holding them back, other than probably just fear. But at some point, fear gets overridden by resentment and by anger and by at the end, like a sense of, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna go down swinging. I'm at least going to put up a fight before I die. And if there's enough Iranians saying that, then who knows? There very well may be a chance, especially considering. And here's the part that really infuriates me, because no one is talking about this. Their economy is on the verge of collapse. They have no capabilities to continue to make any kind of significant profit at all anywhere, because of both the Strait of Hormuz blockade and our effective job at really destroying so many of their key infrastructure installations and resource what do you call it, sources of, I'll just say sources of oil, because that's really the only export they have that's of value. And once again, China is not happy about this. Russia's not happy about this. And as I was trying to explain the last time I was on, although that was so long ago, I'm sure nobody remembers, but even I barely remember. But the point is that they are in a point where they have no storage space left to hold the extracted fuels, fossil fuels, the oil that is extracted is nowhere near enough to satisfy the orders, the needs of the governments that they're supposed to be providing to. And even worse, that's forcing them to do something where I'd never heard of this before, but I heard it described, where they have to cap the wells, meaning they have to seal off the places where there are oil reserves and they were drilling, but they just don't have any more storage capacity, so they have to stop the drilling and come back later. Well, why is that a problem? Well, what happens is because there's been so much oil extracted the end because of the the machine, the gosh, the what's that thing called? I'll just say the oil rig. The oil rig, um, basically, because of the way that the oil rig operates in loosening up crude oil and bringing it to the surface, and after it is removed, the oil seeping back down, and since there's a lot less down there, it's going to sort of naturally fall into the cracks where it will seep in and settle. Because it's doing it now in a totally different pattern, a lot of the oil tends to either soak into the dirt and rock and mud and just different types of nooks and crannies that will fall into the under the surface. And once it does that, it starts to harden. It starts to become totally totally unextractable, and the oil well where you were going to be able to extract like at 100% of it you were going to extract, now you've extracted 50% and you're only going to get about 20% more, even though there would have been 50% more if you just kept being able to drill. But 30% is gone because you had to cap it. That is extremely, extremely damaging to their economy, because once again, all they have to trade with with the civilized world is oil. They're not, a technologically advanced country. They don't have massive medical advancements, massive scientific advancements. They're not making rockets and sending people to the moon. They're not curing cancer. They're not nothing like that. So, since that is the case, there's been a sort of hushed but very, very strong sentiment that it's obvious that the Iranian government, in whatever form it exists in, is trying to end this as soon as possible, because they are not going to be able to make it if this goes on much longer. If they can't return to some stable way of making their economy go back to a functioning economy again, which I don't know, even if we left, if they could do that in the first place. But supposing they could, then they have the population to deal with, which may not be too happy that they're going to be so focused on drilling to send fuels to China while not concerned at all about giving energy to the population. Then once again, it's like, what is this regime going to do, even if you take into consideration everything that we know about them and all their ruthlessness and all the capabilities they have to really, the lack of any remorse, the lack of any kind of ability to follow any kind of rules or regulations around warfare, which sounds stupid, but when you're dealing with an enemy that's so barbaric as to do what they did on October 7th, and this was just a proxy group, of course, but this is what they approved of, and there's damn sure a reason for it. It's to, its intended purpose is obviously to scare off any kind of invading force that's going to man. Well, anyway, the point is that nobody's thinking about these things, and nobody's talking about these things. No one's talking about the practical reality of the situation. Everyone's only talking about, well, this could go on this long, and I can't believe people are still considering that the Strait of Hormuz is some kind of pressure point for the U.S. Like, when we have been, since we've been positioned throughout the strait and have been overseeing to make sure that we are permitting who goes and who stays, There's been, and I loved this because the environmentalists can't complain. The freaking the anti-Israel crowd talking about how it's a genocide against these people. They can't complain because they're taking their they're taking their small guns, small for Navy vessel, but they're taking their I can't remember what they're actually called. For some reason, I'm having a hard time remembering. But anyway, what is it, like 50 millimeter? I can't remember. Anyway, and they're aiming for engine rooms. They're aiming for the engine room. Why? Well, that way they can disable the ship. There will be as few casualties as possible, and there will be no giant oil spillages in the areas, so there won't be any kind of blowback from humanitarian groups, and there won't be overly polluted area that's got a very strong currents leading into a very sort of deep crevice-looking sort of piece of ocean, like the Strait of Hormuz. So, they're avoiding any kind of real negative consequence, and at the same time, now they're escorting ships that we are allowing to carry out their transportation and their commerce, and we're escorting them through. And it just blows my mind that they're like every step of the way. They keep saying we've lost 13 members. Like, yeah, that was in like the first week. And once again, I don't mean to sound cold. I'm not trying to say this is a negative, because that's not at all what I mean. What I mean is we lost 13 members in the first week of the fight. We haven't lost anyone since then. And they keep throwing out this term, we've lost 13 service members. It's like, we know. Has there been any more death? Well, no. Okay, well, you remember, because they always want to try to tie it back to Afghanistan and Iraq. Afghanistan and Iraq. It's the Middle East. It's just like Afghanistan and Iraq. It's a forever war. In that war, there was thousands, hundreds at least, dying every day on both sides. And in this conflict, there's minimal casualties on their side, and there's basically almost nearly no casualties on our side. And I think that, if you were to ask me, and I'm sure if you were to ask any soldier, I'm not trying to put words into anyone's mouth, but I think that if this goes according to plan and Iran is prevented from their ambition of creating a nuclear weapon, and we manage to cripple not only them, but every terror proxy in the region by extension. If you were to ask those 13 servicemen, I know this might sound kind of like, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I would imagine that everyone in the military would say absolutely, if it meant that the conflict with this country that had been going on for almost half a century is now going to be over, then I'd lay down my life. I would lay down my life for it if it meant there was going to be no further conflict between the United States and Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran and their proxies. If I knew that was going to be the outcome, I would lay down my life. And I think when you sign up to become a member of the military, you know what you're signing up for. And I think every single member of the military should certainly be celebrated for their sacrifice without a doubt. But using them as a cudgel against a president who is trying to do everything possible to end the killing, and it's like, once again, these people that run around acting like Iran is this peaceful country that's never done anything wrong. They've murdered who knows how many American citizens. They not only trained just about, they trained the Houthis, they trained Hezbollah, they trained Hamas, they trained ISIS. I think they trained, just about every radical terrorist Islamic group in the region. They've had a hand in training, and somehow there's this just constant denial that they've done anything against the United States. Like, even if you discount the fact that no, they quite literally took over our embassy when they first moved into power, and imprisoned and tortured the members there for about half a year almost, but over a year. I'm sorry, over a year there before they're finally so generous enough to release them. Like, yeah, wow, how generous! So thank you so much. It's just like this, and well, I'll get to that in a minute. But it's just such a, it's so dirty. I listen to the arguments against the conflict, and it just makes me disgusted because I remember I was a very, very staunch anti Iraq war, not activist, I would say, but I went to a number of so like back then I listened to a lot of punk rock and a lot of political punk rock and a lot of punk rock that was very much against war, and there were so many bands coming out of the time that were very much all ideologically pretty much the same, which would say something, but they're pretty decent magicians. Not magicians, musicians. So yeah, it's still, I mean, I enjoyed the shows, but the point is, like, that was what the position was at the time, and the reason was because, once again, Iraq is not Iran, Iraq is not, Lebanon or Palestine. It's not this region where it's, as complicated as it is, it's not a region that was putting us in immense danger of some kind. Like, it's just weird. It's just weird. I guess it's not weird because they have to figure out how to, knock Donald Trump in any way possible. But it's just pathetic. So let me kind of use this to segue into because there's going to be a couple subjects for today. And by subjects this time, I mean people who highlight the absolute worst of leftist argumentation, and the people who are sort of the loudest and most obnoxious people that have been around, as well as, in some cases, some of the most dangerous. And that will bring me to the first clip, which I think is a great opening point because, it's a short little description by Rob Noor. In case you're unfamiliar, Rob Noor is he's friends with Andrew Wilson and Jake and the guys over there with Crucible. He's a very, very skilled and talented debater. I've seen him several times. If you remember, I was talking about when Brian Shapiro went on a rant for about 17 minutes and 40-something seconds, I think it was, total. They said the coolest socks I've ever seen. I don't know if those are going to fit my... Never mind. Anyway, but, man, where's I... Sorry. Was he going to... Yeah, Rob Noor. So, this is in the context of the discussion that... this was actually a really good interview, too, with guys at Trigonometry, Konstantin Kisin and Francis... I always forget his last name. But they had a discussion with Andrew Wilson, which was really good. And, there's definitely places where I feel like I don't agree with Andrew Wilson, or maybe I'm not convinced, but I'm not dismissive either. There's a lot of area like that too. But that's not even the focus of the video. The focus of the video is Rob discussing destiny comes up in the discussion. Sorry, not decision. Destiny comes up in the discussion. It was actually because I think Andrew made a point about how leftists were talking about how virtuous and wonderful they are. Meanwhile, Destiny's casting couch has him sucking dicks all over it, and then in fact, the beginning part has Constantine saying, "But hold on, let's go back to the Destiny dick sucking part because that's actually really important." But that prompted Rob to kind of give his impression, and it was directly about Destiny, but it was also something that was applicable to the left right now in general. That is very, very well spoken and well articulated, to the point that it really encapsulates probably the best description of leftist way of thinking going into any kind of conflict or argument or debate or anything like that. They have a very specific set of attributes and talking points and techniques that they're going to use, but the purpose they use them for is what is it called? Well, you know what? Let's just get into the clip actually, because it's a way to distill the way that rationale works to basically explain how you can be someone on the left and believe the kinds of things you believe, and the reason why, as primitive as it might be, and still somehow at the end of the day make it into, and somehow consider it to be virtuous enough to be something you're willing to stand by and defend as legitimate grievance, regardless of how stupid it sounds, stupid it is. Somehow you're able to do that because this is just the way leftists think, because it reminds me every time when they complain about overstepping authority and how they're shredding the Constitution. It's like, okay, so Biden opened the border. He disobeyed the Supreme Court. He disobeyed court orders. He disobeyed Congress. He went around Congress. He pretty much, at this point, we are pretty sure he barely signed actually anything physically. There's a very strong possibility he didn't even know almost anything about what was actually being signed that was actually supposedly going for presidential confirmation, because the auto pen was quite literally the actual president. I love that image of Joe Biden in the White House along the wall of presidents that Donald Trump put up, where next to Donald Trump 45 and Donald Trump 47, you have Joseph R. Biden, the auto pen. I love it. I love it so much. Anyway, so this is let's just get to this real quick, and it's not super long, but it's not super short either. But it's really descriptive. It's really descriptive, and it gets directly at the heart of exactly what it is that. And the thing is, it's not a complicated answer, but it can be hard to understand how it could be a serious answer. But that's where you have to kind of look. You have to kind of get into the mindset of how these people reach that decision, and it's literally by ignoring everything that I just said. Kind of like a see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil type of thing, and only focus on what the other guy does, because as I mentioned in the comments, these are the people that essentially like. Actually, this was kind of in response to somebody else who had said that that Democrats just hate Republicans, and I kind of had to say, not exactly. They contest this, but it's really a kind of moot point. But it still exists, and you kind of have to acknowledge it because they will swear up and down. Well, it's not Republicans. It's just those evil MAGA Republican extremists that are really the problem. And the problem with that argument, of course, is that number one, Donald Trump is the president and the Republican president. So MAGA, meaning his movement that he started and that still exists under his banner today, represents the vast majority of the party, not any kind of minority. And so that's not just like, a few bad apples. That's like the whole party. So you do really have a problem with the whole party, except for, and this was the other part, I guess if you're somehow still like a Romney Republican or somehow you're for the kinds of presidents that are not really all that interested in doing anything at all that they said they're going to do, and you behave kind of more like a Democrat and just do what's going to kind of consolidate power to the executive branch or to whatever branch you're a part of, then you're more or less playing by the rules, even if it's in opposition. That's the healthy kind of back and forth debate. The no sorts of positions are ones that are against the very establishment and the culture around Washington D.C. to begin with. That's the eternal sin that will get you. That's what did Trump in, and as you see now, which we'll get to in a little bit, there's a reason why they still like over 6 years later are still droning on and on and on all the fucking time about January 6th. Look at all the stuff that's happened since January 6th. And they still treat that. It was ludicrous then, but my God, they still do it. They still treat January 6th like it's on the same level as Pearl Harbor and 9/11. I mean, delusion doesn't even describe effectively what we're talking about. This is so far removed from any kind of real comparison and actual thought that there's only one explanation for it, and that is that you are a complete, well, I guess there's two. You're a complete kook who's lost your mind over the talking points, or you're a Machiavellian control freak who has to have your way, or you're going to throw a hissy fit constantly, which is why I constantly embracing myself and wince every time I think about Speaker Jeffries. I mean, I swear, if we see a Speaker Keem Jeffries, and some people have been finally waking up to that, it looks like. I mean, I'm not going to take credit. It wasn't me that was talking about it, but I did hear some people talking about. In fact, it was actually Andrew Wilson talking to Alex Jones's son, talking about how like Alex Jones and his son both are very now anti-Trump because of the war. They think this is the eternal sin. It blows my mind too, by the way. Biden was less than 2 years ago, and it's like the people already forgot somehow what we were dealing. Do people remember what the border looked like? Do people remember what was going on in the country? Do people remember the raids in the morning on conservatives and journalists and whistleblowers and like all these people whom now they're rushing to the defense of to act like, oh, how dare you persecute a whistleblower? It's like, I'm not persecuting him. I'm asking him questions to see if there's any legitimacy behind the claims. And that's not what you guys do, obviously, unless it's a conservative whistleblower, and it's like with James Comey, whom, by the way, I'm gonna have to get into. By the way, which has to do with the title of the episode today, but we'll get to that in due time. But of course, it also reminds me of another FBI director who was obsessed about numbers. The numbers were a little different, but it was something similar. That's eight. Right. That's 8. What does that mean? Heil Hitler. Oh my God. How dare you? Anyway, how dare you? Anyway, um, so let me get to that video I was talking about a long time ago. Let's see here. Oh man, jeez. Which, by the way, I know it's super late, and I know. Hopefully, I'm just kind of hoping that people watch the video on demand. Which, if you are, thank you very much. I appreciate that. If you're watching it live, thank you as well. The intro is surely there to be something that will get me silenced for at least that portion of the video, which is fine. I don't care. But because when I was coming back, I was like, damn it, we need something that has that freaking fury behind it. But sorry for the wait. Let me get into this clip. And I think this all works now. As a matter of fact, everything works now, and including congressional clips that I've never played. I don't even know if I played before, but
8.
It will fit my favorite dildo perfectly. You're going to look.
oh my goodness. Anyway, how dare you? Anyway, so, oh geez, I'm down. I'm a little high. Let's get that video queued up. I need to move this over here. I need to move this over here. Actually, this needs to go way over here. And there we go. And then this needs to go over here. And there, finally. Okay. Now let's. I was just impressed that after all the freaking software and hardware changes it had to do, after all the cleanup and messy drive spaces and long downloads, long uploads, long exchanges, long renders, and running out of disk drive, hard drive space, and even cloud storage space, I'm still doing all right. But anyway, let me see. This was Rob Noor. Unless these are videos that were no. They go in order like this. And by the way, another reaction, which I don't think we're gonna, we won't probably be going to Rob Noor, who discusses it, but there was a very fascinating, if not embarrassing, debate between the fucking Mr. Radio Show himself, Brian Shapiro, and Rachel Wilson, Andrew Wilson's wife, who was there to debate feminism, and Brian was there to debate how terrible Rachel Wilson is, and Andrew Wilson by extension is, which you notice is a quote unquote debate tactic of his, is just to smear his opponents. He doesn't even hide it. But my God, this guy is, and when we get into the section, because I'm going to go over that in this one for sure. This guy is unhinged lunatic. This guy is so, like I told you already several times about his straight 17.5-minute rant where he didn't even bother to wait for anybody to interject or answer any questions, or he just kept talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. And he doesn't care who it's to. He doesn't care if it's to Jesse Lee Peterson, Rob Noor, or as we'll see later, Gavin McInnes, which he picked the wrong guy with Gavin McInnes. But, man, he is so, I mean, I'm sorry, he comes off to me a little creepy-ish, like a little, like a little like the kind of guy who would, I'm not saying he would, but he has the demeanor of a guy that would, go on a little spree of spilling blood in certain places that he thought were so evil. I'm just pointing out, that the guy is not exactly. I mean, he has such a hard time controlling his absolutely out of control anger, like that just snaps in a second as soon as, and it's not even because of anything big. It's because you mention a word or because you. It reminds me almost of PC Principal, except a big pussy. I guess that's the best way to put it. He's like as quick as if you ever saw South Park with PC Principal, like who's when he first was introduced, and even throughout the entire time that I've seen him, he's been one of the most annoying characters in the show. But politically correct, ideology was all the freaking rage at the time, and it was what led into the woke revolution. But South Park introduced the PC Principle, or no, just PC Principle, and anytime if you said like you said handyman or something, he would get into an insane rage with his freaking eyes popping out of his head, about to just slamming people up against the wall, like, did you suggest something as a binary term and not consider women might be in these positions as well? Like, he just fucking flew off the handle at the mere hint that someone was not being inclusive enough. And that's fucking Brian Shapiro, like, totally down to a T. He just flips out. Like, yeah, if you see in this one with Gavin, we're going to play in a little bit, he mentions the trans ideology and how it's been as of late seeing a lot of people who are become mass shooters. It's a very new phenomena, but it's one that is somewhat predictable when you consider the circumstances behind how many people have ended up regretting their decision after already going through with some kind of life-altering body change, whether it's brought on by just drugs or whether it's performed surgically. There's a lot of regret, but and life-altering changes that you may never. I remember Chloe Cole, who lamented for a long time about whether or not she was going to have a child, or whether she would be able to bear a child or not. It was really incredibly depressing to hear. But once again, the left doesn't care about having children, so she'll get over it. Who cares? But I think Chloe cares. So, anyway, sorry, I'm talking too long. Let me get to this clip. But there's so many, and this was why I knew this episode was going to be one I wasn't going to be able to do in one shot. And considering it's been so long, there's way too much I got to catch up on. But the main reason's also because I just didn't know if I was even going to be able to do it tonight. So I'm glad I'm able to even do one show tonight. So I think I found it. If I could just stop on it. Yeah, here it is. Okay. All right. So here's Rob Knorr. Wait, where did it go? I just hovered over it. Ah, there it is. Okay. All right. Oh, and while I'm at it, I'm going to do this real quick because I just realized that, oh, not that one, where's OBS? Ah, here it is. Well, it'll have to be when I do that, but here, we'll just do it from here, fuck it. The volume's gonna be up really loud, so I'll turn it down a little bit. That should do it. All right. Like I said, this is specifically about Destiny, but you can totally tell how this would be applicable to a lot of people on the left, especially content creators, and you can just I guarantee, like for me, names started coming to mind. Brian Tyler Cohen, of course, Brian Shapiro. Who's that little Adam Moxler? Is that little queef's name? I swear, that guy who he tries to one up Scott Jennings. Oh man, Scott almost bitch slapped him on stage. I have to get to that at some point, but I doubt I'll be able to. But he got a little too big for his britches and started thinking that waving his finger around in Scott's face was going to be just A-okay because he was a big, tough guy. But yeah, Adam Moxler, yeah, man, what a threatening figure. Anyway, without further ado, I think I'm directly over Rob there. So let me, oh, he's going to move in just a second, so we'll just play. But, we have volume? Not yet. Now we do. All right, here we go. Get the mouse.
I feel that Destiny, like, we could use terms like left wing, right wing. I think Destiny is absolutely left wing. I do. But I think what he is, at its core, is what I call an establishmentarian. He is someone that supports the establishment view of things. So he likes institutions. He'll support the FBI. He'll support the State Department. He'll support the establishment order of things, which happens to be leaning towards the Democratic Party and sort of a globalist sort of, that's what he is, right? And there are other people to varying degrees that are the same way. But that's ultimately what that's, now, I think that another person that tends to be sort of establishmentarian that you could compare to are people like Sitch and Adam. The difference is this. Sitch and Adam try to push through those values of sort of lending a default credence to these institutions, which is perfectly fine, even if I disagree with. They try to hold themselves to that standard. They do. They're not really trying to be so politically partisan and biased that it's like we could throw that out. Someone like Destiny defaults to that position, but there is a higher belief that Destiny has when it comes to politics. It surpasses his ability to cheer for the institutions or the establishment. Does anybody know what it is? There's one superseding political belief that Destiny has, and it's almost all of these lefties have the same thing. You could be a socialist, and yet there's one belief above that influences their political positions and what they'll advocate for. Very simple. You guys are making it too difficult. That's it. That's what it is. Trump bad. That's it. It's literally that simple. You could have a socialist. You could have an establishmentarian. You could have sort of a corporatist Democrat. It's Trump bad. Supersedes all of them. So someone like Pisco, who's going to disagree with the political philosophy of someone like Destiny, who will disagree with the political philosophy of someone like Hassan, significant differences between all of it is, but Orange Man bad. Supersedes all of that. So you could say, well, the problem I have with Trump and company is how corrupt they are. And then Destiny's own editor could say, can you explain the fact that you're saying that we need to manufacture evidence, make shit up to arrest Trump and his team? And Destiny says, well, that's because probably what they're doing is not illegal. So we'll just make shit up. But wait a minute. Isn't that accusation sort of one of the very reasons that you claim that you hate Trump? How is that not hypocritical? He doesn't give a fuck. Because any moral underpinning that he may have is superseded by, but Orange Man bad. And so we have to do anything. You'll see people that are the most anti-cop people you've ever met that 100% will cheer for an FBI going after Trump. How? You distrust the cops on literally everything until it goes against Trump, and then you're like, oh yeah, I believe him. Whistleblowers matter, except if they're whistleblowers that are helping Trump out, then they don't matter. Free speech matters, unless it's censoring Trump and his supporters, then it doesn't matter. Kids in cage matter. You get it. Now, there are people on the left, for example, that believe kids in cages is a bad thing. It's just that is superseded by Orange Man bad. So they'll bitch about kids in cages when Trump's there, but when Biden's there and there's 2 times more kids in cages, well, we're not really going to bitch about that because it helps Trump. Now, here's the thing. It's Orange Man today. Tomorrow it'll be Marco Rubio.
Here's the scary
or J.D. Vance. And so really, I'm getting to the same thing that Andrew is, just outlining it through like a policy prescription or a practical prescription, which is in effect, they don't have a moral underpinning because there will always be the exception to the rule. Because there will always be, the next guy's always going to be the existential crisis. J.D. Vance is worse than Trump. He has all the same authoritarian impulses, but he's more well-spoken. That makes him more dangerous. Therefore, keep the lawfare going. We must throw them all in jail.
And we saw that too, if you remember, just for a brief period of time after Trump was essentially considered, you know, basically like he was finished. There was no chance he was ever gonna be able to even make it through a primary again, let alone be a candidate. And that was when he was. That was just before the Mar-a-Lago raid, and it was sort of like the DeSantis sort of love affair for a while. Where don't get me wrong, I love DeSantis. I think he's done amazing with Florida. I think he's done some amazing stuff for the country. I think he's been an inspiration to a lot of other governors, and I think he's also, yeah, a lot of people don't talk about his time. He was actually very effective in the U.S. House. I believe it was a House. He wasn't no, he wasn't Senate. But yeah, when he was a member of the House, he actually was one of the people not quite as good as Trey Gowdy when he was cross-examining Peter Strzok, but not too bad either. He did a pretty damn good job. He has asked some very very poignant questions, and well, it didn't devolve to like the Louis Gohmert level of probing about his affair with the woman, the FBI. That was the FBI attorney. What was her name? Lisa Page. But yeah, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, because of the raid and but DeSantis was going to be the big threat. So they started with the treatment of DeSantis he's a real danger to the country. He's going to, and they still say that to the extent of like, you know, there's been the proposal in Florida to redistrict, because that's another one we'll have to go over later, because my goodness, that is a whole big, massive clusterfuck, and it is so disgusting the way it's being handled. I can't believe that, once again, I guess Democrats forgot this already, or they purposely pushed it out of people's minds, or maybe they forcefully did. Maybe they went to people's houses with a knife and were ready to shank them. It's possible, considering that party. I wouldn't put anything past them. But what I will do is, can I dump them? No. Anyway, excuse me. But yeah, then when Trump kind of got the steam back, you saw it was DeSantis wasn't nearly. It was just a sudden hard shift away from DeSantis into Trump, and then it stayed that way again, and then it got even worse and it just, you know, after everything that's happened, once again, it still blows my mind that that the people should be able, and I think most, definitely most conservative voters seem to okay. Anyway, geez, lost my train of thought. But anyway, so with that sort of framework in mind, let me go to there was one that I thought was really. We could do the Gavin McInnes one. Oh wait a minute, hold on a second. Oh wow, I did actually cut that twice. No wonder that seems really weird. Well, hold on. Let me see what I had Oh, oops, sorry about that. Because, ooh, man, the Brian Shapiro thing actually is, man, actually, I'm gonna have to at least get through that because his appearance on Jesse Lee Peterson. Oh man, that was. This may have been one of the best guests, as you could probably tell from the intro, of on Jesse Lee Peterson that I've ever seen. Because the guy, I mean, he is such an expert troll with the Great White Hope, Donald Trump, and I'm black, I can't read very well, and there's this point in the conversation where Brian gets so furious. And he asked a question that I've often wondered about Brian. Like, he actually asked Jesse, "Do you know or are you friends with any black people?" And Jesse goes, "Brian, my children are black. Most of my family's black." It's retarded. He's so fucking stupid. He's just so, but he gets so angry. I guess I gotta go for that one. But here's a nice segue. The Gavin McInnes clip that actually has the sort of there's a link because it has both, and not just Gavin McInnes, who I've got to play more clips of Gavin. I forgot how good he is with he doesn't mince words. He doesn't bullshit anybody. And he doesn't give a shit if he says something that people are going to be offended by, like when they talk about January 6th again. And Brian, of course, can't shut up about January 6th, and he answers this question just so perfectly. But of course, Piers Morgan has to go in there with his self-righteous ass and try to act like, oh, but the Proud Boys, they were such a threat to the United States. They were racist. Yeah, it's the same Tommy Robinson bullshit that you tried to fucking push onto everybody. He was just a football thug. And he's a racist. Yeah, he's a racist because he's sick and tired of people from Islamic countries, especially Pakistan, coming in and, raping 9, 10, 11-year-old girls. Yeah, man, what a racist sack of shit. And it's like, fuck off, Pierce. This is the same, like, nose up in the air, snobby ass bullshit that you pulled when you were sitting with Ben Shapiro and talking about guns and because you're so appalled by guns and that it was funny as hell. If you watch that and then you watch Ted Nugent, what Ted Nugent talk about it with Piers Morgan, it was a completely different type of argument, which I'm sure you would imagine. Ben Shapiro versus not versus, but like Ben Shapiro debating Piers Morgan versus Ted Nugent debating Piers Morgan about guns. Whew, boy, Ted Nugent or Gee Whiz. If anybody knows that reference, by the way, you're a fan for life, and you're my best friend. Maybe you don't want to be my best friend. Maybe I don't know, but you're my worst enemy. You're Brian Shapiro's best friend. But anyway, I definitely don't want to be that. Oh, jeez. Speaking of which, I will be covering this in more detail this week. But it's like this guy is so. I've made a point not to focus on individuals very often, and if I do, I only will talk about them. And I promise, I'm not going to stay on Brian Shapiro for episode after episode. But man, he's just been going on everything lately. Like, I'm assuming that when he gets a call to debate or to show up somewhere, he doesn't even bother listening to what the topic is. He doesn't bother to look up anything about the event. He looks up his opponent, sees a few things they've done and their stances on it, and then bases his whole debate around smearing his opponent. That's probably, based on what I've seen, that's all he does. And then he spouts a bunch of platitudes and a bunch of stupid crap that he knows nothing about, hence the things he says in the Jesse Lee Peterson clip, which we really had to go over that. But first, let's go over this one real quick with Gavin, because he tries to pull the same high and mighty, trick. And he also tries to he'll do this thing where he hears something that he knows the media would love to hear in a loop, just over and over again, and just taken and spun into whatever context they would like to put it in. Especially when it comes to like January 6th, it's like the whole Charlottesville and both sides thing that is, only the dumbest of people still believe. But in this case, he hears something Gavin says about January 6th, and he does the same thing where he's like, can you please say on Piers Morgan right now what you just said about January 6th? Like, it's so pathetic, and Gavin's answer is amazing. But anyway, we'll get to this one right now. So let's check this out.
We're seeing really an explosion of decentralized left-wing violence that is being fueled, at least in part, by social media sites like Blue Sky.
And in this individual case, it seems that the shooter was radicalized on Blue Sky, in particular by people like Will Stanton.
This is about, by the way, the shooter from the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's what they're specifically discussing on this one, as well as left-wing political violence in general. But it's specifically around the topic of this shooter. So, anyway.
So, a lawyer who has endorsed political violence, and this is now becoming mainstream. You see this great derangement over the past 10 years because of Trump. There have been, of course, 3 assassination attempts against the president. One came within an inch of being a successful assassination. And you didn't see this under President Obama. You didn't see this under President Biden. In fact, it seems like it's going to only increase from here. And maybe it's looking like a reprise of the late 60s and early 70s when you would have mass amounts of left-wing violence, in some years up to more than 2,000 bombing attacks per year. If you read Days of Rage, it's a great book about this. That's my fear, is that we're going into an internet decentralized new version of the Days of Rage from the late 60s and early 70s.
Okay, Gavin McInnes, you're an interesting person to have on for this debate, because I think by your own admission, when you were
here we go
setting up the Proud Boys, you said a lot of stuff which you've now regretted saying. I think you used a lot of incendiary rhetoric about all manner of things.
No.
You haven't regretted it?
Everything I said that sounded violent was a reaction to violence, but the SPLC and the ADL would take these quotes out of context and say, oh, he's a Nazi calling for random violence.
This is, I forgot to mention, this is also after the case broke about the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is just so remarkable. I've said this before, and once again, excuse me, this is one of those things, and I think Gavin totally gets this. He doesn't say this specific point, but it's so important to remember this because people just don't seem to understand this. And it's probably because they've never even seen or heard a racist person, like a real racist person, speak in their life. But I've heard racist people speak, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. Racist people, really racist people, they have no problem. In fact, you cannot get them to shut up about how inferior black people are, or Mexican people are, or people who aren't white are. Or, no matter who it is, whatever racial group it is, Mexican people over black people, this happens a lot. When you see real racism, like real people who actually are racist against another group, they have no problem saying completely over and over again in no uncertain terms how much they dislike another race because they're this, they're that, they're, whatever it might be. And for some reason, the left just has this obsession with this idea that there's just covert race. That's the only kind that exists. People that are secret racists just hanging out and they're like super spies that are around, ready to unleash their racism around the world. It's like, no, they literally have Nazi flags all over their garage. They freaking fly, they fly the SS bolts on, just about every doodle in their house. Their kids are drawing it. I mean, we're talking about a serious ideology of racism that usually is, sadly, but ironically enough, born out of usually being within the prison system, because, and one reason a lot of people that come out of prison have a very very difficult time integrating is because when you're in prison, you cannot, and I mean, like, supermax prison or high maximum security prisons, where you're someone who's convicted on a very serious crime. In those places, like, you don't just fraternize with other races. You don't hang out with other races. If you do something where you're hanging out with other races, then you're either going to get your ass beat or killed. I mean, that's how. And even if you're not, part of a prison gang. Now, sometimes, depending on the prison, it's not going to be as strictly enforced. But once again, when it really comes to like the maximum security, hardest of the hard sort of prisons, without a doubt, there is a very, very strong culture of racial segregation, which ironically, once again, is, as much as they hate prisons, as much as they hate racism, supposedly, which even though they do, they're pushing just about everything that could be as segregationist as possible. Despite all that, they have no problem whatsoever developing new policies that will be that's interesting. Damn, that's really good. Hold on, let me never mind. I'm sorry. Let me get back to the clip. I forgot it was on this. So.
We don't call for random violence. All the times I've said punch someone in the face, it's been a reaction to Antifa punching us in the face. I mean, I don't think a lot of the pundits out there have been outside. In 2015, 2016, we were getting attacked on a regular basis. I was getting jumped, and I always said, fight back. I never called for random violence. No one on the right calls for random violence. That's a myth. This whole, like, well, both sides are flawed. No. The left is flawed, and right-wing violence is a myth. All of this stuff about, there was a shooting at Dollar General, that guy's a nut. That's a Nazi who wants all blacks to die and go back to Africa, denying the Holocaust. That's not our guys. We eschew our radicals. The left...
Real quick, two things. I love how Brian so smugly sits there like, what an idiot, what an idiot. No, Brian, you're just fucking retarded. Sorry. And number two, this is 100% true. If you look back on those early clips where Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer and those guys were going out, it was always where Antifa showed up. It was always where Antifa showed up. And it was always actually in an area, well, maybe not always, but almost always, in an area where there had been a group of conservatives that had already been getting their ass kicked. And Antifa are such cowards and such little bitches that they're not interested in just knocking someone out and, disabling them. No, they would knock someone down, kick someone to the ground, and then they would bash their head in with a bike lock. They would knock someone to the ground and then hit them upside the head with a freaking crowbar. I mean, these guys were not interested in hurting people just to hurt them in some sort of fight. They wanted to cause lasting damage or kill people. That was the point. It was disgusting. They had no restraint whatsoever. So when these guys would start to show up, who were actually, people who knew how to fight and people who knew how to defend themselves and weren't just showing up with a bunch of equalizers of some kind, in some cases, some kind of blunt instrument, but not even that very often. It was just their freaking fists. I've talked about this guy before, but this guy Rufio at one of the riots where Antifa was just going around doing the same shit. This little Antifa fag was freaking trying to beat up this guy that was on the ground, and this guy Rufio, he just walked up and just cracked this fucking guy, and he just went limp. He just went dead limp. Now, I've heard this guy's backstory. He's not a guy to idolize, but that's something that, at the bare minimum, I would say, that is at least something that is seeking redemption for some of your past mistakes, because to step in on behalf of someone who is helpless on the ground and a group of thugs are continuing to beat the shit out of him, while Brian Shapiro wants to complain about how the Capitol Police on January 6th were all no, they weren't all anything, and to whatever extent they were, you would actually be, maybe inclined to listen to Stephen Sund, but because Nancy Pelosi didn't like him and threw him under the bus because he told the truth about how ridiculous it was that her and the sergeant-at-arms in the House and the Senate were blocking the National Guard from coming in, they didn't give a fuck about the Capitol Police getting whooped by a bunch of freaking people who were probably spurred on by the FBI in the first place. No, they just wanted to have their moment to, act as benevolent as possible by Pelosi saying, I will take full accountability, which she never did. She only blamed Trump over and over and over and over again, even though nothing he did or said was at all. I mean, the gates were breached before he finished his speech. If that doesn't tell you there was no incitement in the speech itself, the speech wasn't designed to incite a riot, I don't know. It's not like, once again, it's not like everyone waited for Donald to finish his speech very politely and then they all went down to the Capitol and then they started. No, they were already inside the Capitol building before he finished his speech. Now, everything during that day is a jumbled mess, but what we know for a fact is no one came there with a deadly weapon that intended to cause serious harm to a police officer, or they would have done it. Because there were police officers, of course, and most infamously, the one that shot Ashley Babbitt. There were Capitol Police there who had no business being in the Capitol, no business holding a firearm, no business being in any way, shape, or form someone who would have been there to secure the building, because he murdered an innocent woman. And to whatever extent you want to accuse her of something, she was climbing through a window that she didn't break, that was broken by somebody else, and that someone had climbed in before her and was climbing in after her, and this guy just felt like this one woman among the whole crowd was dangerous enough to shoot in the neck. Now, it's ever so inconvenient, so Brian will not mention any of that, and he'll only talk about the cops who were injured for days. Oh, and Ashley Babbitt was killed, and her mother was arrested for protesting her daughter being fucking executed. But we don't care about that, do we, Brian? No, of course not. Just like we don't care about Rachel Morin or Jocelyn Nungery or anybody else. Why can't I think of the most famous one? Man, that's crazy. I can't think of the most famous one. Laken Riley. There we go. I remember Laken Riley Act, so I remember the name. It's kind of sad. But, I mean, this stuff is still happening today, and I might get to this one today. I kind of would like to, but it's a really long one. But, geez, Brandon Gill does the country proud in this session of Congress. But we'll get to that if we can get to it. But anyway, let's get back to this, because Gavin's cooking now, so. And you can see Pierce. Look at Pierce. Look at this snobby-ass look on his face. And he's going to go to Brian, of course, because Brian's going to set everybody straight. Look at Mr. Serious over here. He's ready to go. He already has the ammunition. He knows what he's doing.
Embraces their radicals. They embrace the trans. They even embrace jihad, where they go global intifada. So we're the good guys.
They're the bad guys. It's not an even keel here.
Listen to the fake laugh.
All right, Brian Shapiro, we massively misunderstood the Proud Boys.
Yeah,
they are a
you did.
force for peace and harmony.
No.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, what an imbecile to bring up trans people. We're talking about violence. What the hell does trans have to do with what we're talking about right
He brought it up at the end of the discussion, and he honed in, and this is what I mean. He hones in on very specific keywords that he knows he can use as pressure points to try and push some sort of radical bullshit that he's gonna sound like, oh, what, this is just so beyond the pale. What a bigot this guy is, and it just doesn't work with Gavin. It doesn't. And I don't think Pierce is gonna want to have Gavin on the show again. But yeah, hey, look at this fucking clown! I swear.
now? That's number one.
Deaths
Hold
since
on,
2018.
I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. I'm not done
In
yet.
mass
I'm not
shootings,
done yet.
46 people.
I'm not done yet. First of all,
Trans
hold on
people
a
are
second.
per capita
First of all,
committing
guys,
the most mass
you gotta let me
shootings of any
talk. I didn't
demographic.
interrupt you. Gotta let me talk. First of all, of all the mass shootings in this country, we're going years and years. Less than 1%, less than a fraction of them have been mass shooters. So you guys are lying. Number one. Number two, was that Antifa on January 6th? Was the Proud Boy member? Was that Antifa that was responsible for January 6th when 140 officers were beaten? Was that Antifa?
They were beaten for shooting at protesters. They were beaten for flashbangs. People were going, stop.
Flashbang,
Two
yeah,
patriots
that's actually-
died that day.
Guess what?
Wasn't Boyle and
Guess
Ashley
what?
Babbitt.
Okay, hold on
by
a second.
your cops,
Stand
by
back.
your Capitol Police, your affirmative action hires killed
hold
patriots that day.
on a second. Stand back and stand by for one moment. Let me just finish this for a moment, sir. Okay, it has been proven in a court. Yeah. It was proven in a court of law. There were over 700 people that were convicted. They had the opportunity to defend themselves.
No, they
Those were
didn't.
right-wing
They did not.
That gave Enrique
And you are
Tarrio 22
complicit.
years for not being there?
Mm-hmm.
Enrique Tarrio is an imbecile. If that's the hill that you're going to die on, then you have a problem.
He's an imbecile. Yeah. He was an imbecile who was not at the Capitol on January 6th, but was still blamed for it because he was the leader of the Proud Boys at the time. And of course, that meant he had to have had something to do with it. And once again, he said they got their, they were. There was no justice in that system. There was lawyers who didn't give a shit about their clients. They were held in, you got these pieces of garbage out here talking about these terrible conditions that migrants are stuck in. They're thrown into concentration camps and they're it's like, okay, did you hear the conditions in the DC jail? Did you hear any of the experience? No, you didn't, because you're too busy bitching and moaning about January 6th and how all the people involved should be thrown in prison for life. That's another thing too. How long is long enough? They didn't murder anyone. They didn't rape anyone. They didn't cripple anyone, as far as I know. They didn't do any kind of serious damage. They didn't torch the building. They didn't do anything that would have been considered like a serious crime against the state or a federal or state crime in any way, shape, or form, to the point that they would have gotten some kind of giant sentence, like we're talking 20 years to life or something. And yet 4 years wasn't enough, and not getting a fair trial wasn't enough, and not having adequate counsel wasn't enough, and in many cases not even being given a chance to even contact an attorney wasn't enough. Like, these guys were railroaded one after another, given false promises, false hope. They were told the charges were going to be this, and they arrived in court, and then, nope, it's way worse, it's this. You agreed to this. No, I didn't. I agreed to, no, this is what we have on the docket. Sorry, you agreed to that. These guys were treated like garbage, and no one saw it because, of course, this was all, we can't have people, and this is too serious. You notice when, the right tries to claim something related to privacy for victims or privacy for people who could be at risk, the left goes berserk. And yet, when there's conditions in a case like, I don't know, say January 6th, or maybe Donald Trump's cases challenging the electors in certain states, and how the actual election procedures in each state were unconstitutional. They always say he had his day in court and he lost. No, none of the cases were heard. I've said this before. They were dismissed on standing, not on evidence. The evidence wasn't heard. Nothing was heard. They were dismissed without any kind of chance to even plead their case. They were dismissed on standing. They couldn't even plead their case in court. So no, there was no. So you want to talk about due process violations? I would start there, but of course Brian and his warped bullshit has no idea what he's talking about when he talks about due process. He has no idea what he's talking about when he's talking about January 6th in general. It's just a cudgel. It's just a cudgel like everything else that the left uses. Buzzwords, and Piers is nodding along with it like this is all just fine, because all he's heard is the same bullshit propaganda that every freaking media outlet has said about the Proud Boys, that they're a right-wing extremist group. They were a drinking club, essentially. Not much more than that. They were a group of guys who went out drinking all the time, and they didn't get involved in a damn thing until Antifa started running around, burning down cities, and beating the shit out of white guys and Republicans. That was really what happened, like how they got infamous. And everyone knows if it's a white guy beating up on a group of minorities, or God forbid black bloc, then it must be the aggressor. They must be the aggressors. Not, of course, the guys running around burning down police precincts, burning down courthouses, burning down freaking whole sections of cities with fiery but mostly peaceful protests. These guys are fucking lunatics. And these are the guys that this fucking clown will throw his weight behind and act like they're the noble fighters, protectors of democracy. Go to hell, you piece of trash. Jeez.
Sir.
22 years.
Yeah. Oh, he was convicted of seditious conspiracy and dump. Let me ask you a question. If you beat a cop on January 6th, are you a hostage and a patriot? Yes
They
or no?
didn't beat cops. Cops were shooting flashbang grenades into the crowd. They were going.
He has
"Stop,
no
stop,
fucking
stop,
clue
stop,
about
riot."
anything.
Wait,
Capitol
hold on,
Police
hold on.
who were going
hold on.
under Nancy
You're
Pelosi's
saying cops-
instructions.
Wait, I want you to.
Here we go.
I want you to say this on Pierce Morgan's show right now on the record. Are you saying cops were not beaten on January 6th? Yes or no?
I'm saying cops started a riot, and in a melee,
That's not what I
people
asked.
get hurt.
I don't care what your opinion. Were cops beaten on
Shut up
January
with your
6th? Yes or no?
carefully crafted questions.
Yep,
to make
there it
you
is.
crap
Carefully
on
crafted
You don't know what
questions.
happened. You don't get outside.
The point I would make is this. If we were talking about a report which came out which said that the FBI had been,
Oh,
as we
this is
know they
hilarious.
do, had been funneling cash to members of drug cartels, mafia, whatever it may be,
Listen to this.
with a view to getting informers who would give information leading to mass arrests of these people and incarceration, I presume you wouldn't have had a problem with that. So when I see the defense has been put up by them, which is, this money was going to these groups, to informers, so that we could catch the real bad guys and bring them to justice. Is that not a reasonable argument if you think about FBI and so on?
Catch
Explain
the real bad
difference to
guys.
you.
If you think of the FBI and so on, the Southern Poverty Law Center are not police officers. They're not FBI agents. They're a fucking nonprofit. They're not there to send their spies into the remnants of KKK groups. That's not what they do. They prosecute cases. They bring evidence to cases that are supposedly supposed to bring evidence to cases involving racist groups and groups that are pro segregation and pro white white power, whatever the hell. I don't know. I don't know. Can you help me out, Frank Fugazi? What is it again? That's right. That's right. That's what it was. Just this idea that the Southern Poverty Law Center they weren't just giving money to the KKK or to white supremacist groups like the Nazi lowriders and the Aryan Brotherhood and literal literal white supremacist groups, which, by the way, are very, very, very few in number in the country, to like there's this idea that there's this huge hidden white supremacist sect in the country. There's tiny fucking little blocks of like maybe 20 people in a group that run around and convince themselves all the time that they're gonna defend the white race. They're nothing. They're nothing in the grand scheme of things. They have no political or social power. They have no influence or reach. This is not the KKK of 150 years ago. This is the KKK of basically non-existent KKK. Like when you talk about the KKK, it's like, what are you talking about? You heard of cross burnings recently? There have been a bunch of cross burnings going on in the country. There have been all these lynchings recently you heard of? I haven't heard of any. But there's a noose in a black man's garage. Oh my gosh. Oh wait, no, he's just never heard of a slip knot before, so he doesn't know what it looks like on a garage to pull the fucking garage door down. I mean, it's unbelievable, and yet this is the big white supremacist threat. And so the Southern Poverty Law Center, in all their glorious wisdom, decided we're gonna hire informants to infiltrate. They aren't a fucking law enforcement arm, you stupid fuck. They aren't out there to infiltrate extremist groups. They have no training to do that. They are out there to provide legal advice and to defend people in court. They aren't out there to infiltrate groups. This is the dumbest defense, and he's bought into it hook, line, and sinker because he has no idea. Once again, this is another big misconception, and another reason why when Destiny gets into arguments with people about this, he tries to bring up this point because his ultimate goal is, of course, to get conservatives arrested and thrown in jail. That Congress isn't enough because they don't have a law enforcement arm. They don't have any enforcement mechanism in Congress. They can only send recommendations to the DOJ or to the FBI or different law enforcement agencies, but they don't have an enforcement mechanism themselves. And neither do groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center or, Turning Point USA or any other group out there that's a nonprofit. They don't have that. That's not what they do. That's not what their purpose is. And if they were to try to do that, they would probably be labeled vigilantes because it's against the law. You don't just go and infiltrate a group without, oversight from an actual law enforcement body. This is so stupid. That is the defense, and it would be ripped apart in a court if it was actually if it was actual proceeding that is fair and actually, which it seems like it might be, unlike what's going on with this freaking guy who attempted to kill Trump this time, who the judge just apologized to for the terrible conditions he's been forced to be in. We're reaching new lows in this country for the way that the judiciary has been essentially kind of running roughshod over the president of the United States in the last few. But the left would go crazy because why? Oh, well, there was Roe v. Wade, what they're still pissed about, and now there's the devastating news that we'll no longer have segregated districts in the. It blows my mind that the one group of people that is still for segregation in any way, shape, or form is Democrats. Segregated districts for the purpose of the consensus and the drawing of lines for congressional districts for Congress. Segregation of schools and graduation ceremonies. Segregation of dorms in college. Segregation, they're the only party that is for segregation still. And yet they want to shout racism at Republicans for everything. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. But go ahead. Keep going. Keep telling us the truth. If you let's hear that truth, brother.
Bring them to justice. What are you, 8 years old? Are we playing cowboys and Indians? The SPLC was creating Nazis from scratch. They weren't garnering information. I'll prove it to you right now. Go to the SPL site. What are the scoops they're getting?
Brian,
what is
stop
this? They're gonna rob a
shaking
bank
your
on
head,
Friday.
you
There was
fucking
no
dumbass.
There was no unique information at the SPL site. It was all just, this is the group, this is what they do, all Googleable. They weren't paying them for info. They weren't paying them to stop crimes. They weren't paying for inside tips. They were paying them to exist. They weren't paid for information. They were paid for agitation.
Exactly.
And they did it. The SPLC makes money on photographs of Charlottesville with a tiki torch. They made
Yes,
$30 million
absolutely.
from that photograph. And it's just like this right-wing violence, left-wing violence thing. You look up a bunch of deranged Nazis with Hispanic names, by the way, and you go, that's your side. This is our side. No, that's not our side. We're not Nazis. We don't want blacks to die. We don't deny the Holocaust. Those are lunatics. Your guys are your friends. Cole Allen is your pal. The Zizians, they have the same politics as you. You're in bed with your radicals. Our radicals, we don't even know them. They're freaks. And the SPLC and the ADL has spent hundreds of millions of dollars amalgamating us with our radicals, which is a total myth. Meanwhile, you guys warmly embrace your radicals. That is the difference. You're the ones saying, my relatives can't be with me on Thanksgiving because they support Trump. We're the ones going, you're a crazy ex-girlfriend. I'm so done with your crap.
That is 100% true. Preach, Gavin. That's 100% true. And that's really when it comes down to it. When you hear the way that, I forget the guy's name. He's a guy that does a lot of man on the street interviews with people. He was just doing this sort of discussion on Renee Good and just Minnesota ICE in general. And there was this guy, this lunatic who, of course, disagreed with their opinion, but sent his kid in to talk to him and the girl that was with him. She's I can't remember her name. She sometimes does guest spots on CNN with Scott Jennings and on that ridiculous Abby Phillips debate show. But first he sends his kid, and bear in mind his kid's like 8 or 9 years old. He has no idea what he's talking about, but his dad told him exactly what to say. So he's just trying to go off of what his dad said. Then, he's shouting at him from off to the side, like, say, ask this. And they're like, do you want to debate us, sir? Because, it seems like your son is a little young for this. And finally, he can't contain himself anymore, and he just comes up, and he won't let it go that this guy was trained terribly. This should never have happened. Yeah, it should never have happened, but she should never have, driven her car straight at an ICE officer. That's not to mention evaded arrest in doing so. But at the same time, like they never will acknowledge that may have been a problem. There may have been a problem of people blocking ICE, preventing people from doing their job and removing illegals from the country. And meanwhile, when they try to just escape from law enforcement and nearly hit a cop in the process, the cop trying to stop the threat by pulling his gun out and shooting the threat, that's all the cop's fault. Or that's all ICE's fault. Excuse me. And so it comes to an impasse because this guy is super emotional. He gets super angry. He's snapping to anger really quick. So they get this vibe. They're like, okay, that's enough of this. We're going to move on. And he won't leave. He keeps following them. He just keeps following them around for like 30 minutes. And because he wants to talk more. He wants to get more jabs in. He wants to talk more about this. And it's just like, dude, no. That's perfectly encapsulates exactly what the problem is when you try to discuss these things with people who are on the left, particularly because they have their emotions and their entire identity attached to their political ideology. And when you have that combination set up, they view it as you're attacking me as a person. No, we're attacking, we're attacking a political movement that's very violent, that encourages violence and excuses people who've broken the law and who continue to break the law, by the way, and are full of people who have been released over and over and over again who go on to commit worse and worse crimes and eventually lead to murder, like with Irina Zarutska, or, take your pick. And yet, no one on the left cares about those people, even if, once it got to the point that they couldn't even acknowledge that a woman who escaped war-torn Ukraine, their pet project, which was so important, to come here only to have her throat stabbed by a illegal who was an absolute fucking lunatic and racist, who shouted, "Got that white girl," like I was, or not shouted, was just walked back and forth up and down the train car saying, "Got that white girl, got that white girl," which no one should forget. That's exactly what happened. Maybe we have a problem here. Maybe this is somebody who's, I would say, incompatible with this country. But they don't care about, once again, and I don't know if you guys heard the story about, there was a guy who was trying to do a mural for Irina Zarutska. It was a guy doing a big portrait, and the mayor of the city, it was, I can't even remember where it was, but he said, "No, we can't have this. This goes against our political beliefs. It's too divisive." Oh, I'm sorry. The portrait of a dead young girl who was stabbed on a train is too political for you. A mural recognizing her and remembering her, that's a little too political for. Sorry. Oh, my bad. And God, I can't really imagine. Like, when I saw her mom I'd never seen her mother before. That was probably the hardest scene to watch at the State of the Union this time around, because you can tell, like, no one has mentioned her parents at all. No one had mentioned her parents at all up until that point that I'd seen. And so I didn't know, I didn't even know if they were in the same country. I didn't know if they'd managed to escape Ukraine. I didn't know if they were still alive. I had no idea. And when I saw her sitting there and rising when President Trump acknowledged Irina, and Erica Kirk standing right next to her and giving her a pat on the shoulder, it really was, it was really... It was really heartwarming, aside from the fact that, you had a bunch of people in the building who didn't really give a shit and were more interested in yelling at Trump for deporting people like the sick son of a bitch that killed her. But, that actually reminds me, and it leads me to a clip that we can play, because this is actually a perfect follow-up to that. Because speaking of Erica Kirk and sick people, we can continue the highlight reel of these sick people and what exactly it is that's motivating this whole thing. I'm going to make my closing argument in just a minute, because I think this is kind of a good way to wrap up. But I'm going to play a couple more clips. This first one, if you ever had the misfortune of hearing about this woman, her name is Jennifer Welsh, and the left had some delusion that she was going to be the next Joe Rogan. And her plan to do that was to go on air and talk shit about every conservative and use the radical talking points about how we need to kill Donald Trump and we need to... it was great that Charlie Kirk died because he was a racist. And now she spends her days doing nothing but ragging all over fucking Erica Kirk. And this is one of the people that I consider to be, like, the most disgusting people out there. The people who will take a widow, and yeah, she's in the public eye, I get it. But, first of all, what exactly is it that she's done that makes you feel any less, like, puts you in any kind of jeopardy or in harm's way or in any way infringes on your rights or your ability to do anything. Nothing. You just obsess over her constantly because you hate her talking points. And it's also because it's a woman, and I think, honestly, because women are going to want to gossip about someone who they disagree with ideologically, and especially when it comes to awfuls, affluent, what is it? What's the acronym? Affluent white female liberals. Yeah, that's it. This woman is probably the peak of that condition because she is sick. She is absolutely filled with nothing but a combination of narcissism and like vile, disgusting hatred for just about everyone that she disagrees with, and watch the way that she tries to imitate and humiliate Erica Kirk in this freaking little performance she puts on, where some stupid co-host she has there is just laughing it up like it's just the most hilarious thing she's ever seen, which is another reason why, you shouldn't rely on fat-ass friends that have no experience with comedy to give you feedback on your performance. But unfortunately, if you haven't heard of this woman and you never saw it, you're going to see her now because you should be forced to suffer with me on this one. And if I still have it, I am also going to play one other thing. I might not have it though, but even if I don't, it's okay because this is actually introduced and then given some following thoughts by one Dana Lash, whom, if you're unaware, well, you'll get the idea. Because man, let's just say she used to be a spokesman for the NRA, and she was very good at what she did. Very good at what she did. So she knows how to handle a hostile group. And oh boy, Jennifer might want to watch out for pissing off Dana Lash. Anyway, this is what she had to say about this. So I just saw it right here. Oh, whoops. There we go.
It's Friday. You know where I'm going with this, boys and girls. You know where we're going. Let's go ahead and hit the 13, please.
Why can't we at iHip News have crazy camera angles? Why? Why can't we? Why can't we act unhinged? I want to be unhinged for America. I want to be crazy for America. I want to wake up this morning for her.
Where's her face?
America's
so red?
pronouns. She, her. All right, that's all we have.
Look at this.
Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure
oh my
you
gosh, that
pre-order
dye
my
job.
book,
Girl, fix your roots.
which I would like to dedicate to one Erica Kirk, not today fascist. And Erica,
don't put
the
your
person
face
that
on a
I'm
book.
talking about today, fascist, is you.
Hmm.
You were the
Wow.
racist fascist.
I think everyone's talking about that.
Whom I am talking to. The work that your husband's company and that you were doing to America's youth to make them racist, narrow-minded,
Oh my gosh, I
hateful,
can't
and
deal with it. First off, I don't even know who the broad she's talking to. That's Jennifer Welch. She was a really crappy interior designer. Everything from home goods. I'm a designer. It's true. I mean, let's really spice this up. Let's get a ceramic chain link. That doesn't mean anything. We're going to place it on the coffee table. I mean, you know what I mean. Anyway, so where to start with this? First off, you want me to be mean, so here it is.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah. Possum lady. Well, possum lady. What is that? That's what the chat was saying. I don't know what that means. Oh, that's what they call her. Well played. So she's
Not bad, actually. Yeah, she does.
mad
Look like a
at, first
possum.
off, can I just not even get into the context of the content of what she's discussing, because I'm so you want me to be mean, and these are mean girls, and only mean girls can deal with mean girls. First off, if you're going to put
They
your
can deal
face
with
on
them
camera,
best.
at least make sure that your skin texture in your coloring is consistent, because you look like an alcoholic. You look like Burl Ives with your giant red nose. I don't know what
Barbra
how much,
Streisand.
like, boxed wine you were drinking before you did your segment, and I don't know if that's supposed to be funny or not, but the redness overall Maybe she just got a laser treatment on her incredibly taut face. Interesting. Pulled within 6 inches of sin. Just, cover it up and make it consistent. The chick that was giggling like an airhead on with her, fix your roots, dear heavens. And, have someone tone down that brassiness. I mean, you're a woman, for crying out loud. It's 2026. We all have social media. There's no need to have that brassiness and, 2-inch roots. Just stop. Number 2, the 3, right? 2 or 3. She did this because she was promoting her book. I'm surprised this woman, there's no way she wrote a book because she can barely talk. Her reading comprehension is just a couple of steps above a tardigrade. So not really sure that I believe that she actually wrote this book. But here she is, this 60-year-old woman with a Jocelyn Wildenstein hobby of plastic surgery, who decides to go after a younger woman, Erica Kirk, because she thinks that it's going to get her clicks. That's incredibly sad. So when your face is like a prolapsed anus and your skin has an ungodly red texture, maybe take a beat, sit out for a little bit, and reevaluate your life before you decide to put your own self on blast by going after someone who has only ever exhibited a level of grace that you yourself do not deserve, but are given anyway.
Not bad. Not bad at all. I will admit that I don't think I still have the clip, but in previous segment on Matt Walsh's show, he went in hard too, because this broad has been fucking going after Erica Kirk since Charlie was murdered, almost to the day. And to be honest, it's just stayed as disgusting as it ever has been. I don't know, the only thing I can think of is that you have Melania Trump, you have Erica Kirk, good-looking women who, let's be honest, you look at any woman who's wandering around in the leftist crowd whenever there's some No Kings protest, and I would take Melania Trump or Erica Kirk over just about every woman in that fucking crowd any day of the week, as far as we're talking about. And, well, I'm sure personality, too. If you're out there shouting about no kings and you have no fucking clue what you're talking about, I think I would put my eggs in the basket of the one that I know is actually a decent person and at the bare minimum knows something beyond 2 + 2 = 4. Maybe not even that. But Matt Walsh gave an amazing quip, which was that it's unfortunate that this happened, but there's one thing that can be said about Charlie that can never be said about Jennifer, which is that when Jennifer dies, no one is going to care. No one's going to bother to even discuss it. The very most it might get is someone might say, "Who died?" Jennifer, what? Oh, who's that? Oh, that lady. Oh, yeah, she died? Oh, okay. Because no one's going to care. And that's sorry, it's true. When you're some venomous, constantly angry and just so obviously filled with this fucking overwhelming narcissism of it should be always about me, I should be the center of attention, this idea that this fucking unfunny, untalented, completely unattractive in every way, completely uninteresting in every way, stupid broad who does nothing but attack people on the right is somehow going to bring in an audience the likes of which Joe Rogan, who for the most part stays away from political issues unless he has someone directly involved with it on his show, is going to somehow turn an audience over that's going to be some massive score. Sorry, you're way off the mark on that one. It's not going to happen. It's not. Don't get your hopes up. I don't care if it's Jennifer Welsh or if it's Jennifer Aniston. It doesn't matter who it is. They're not gonna get anywhere near Joe Rogan's numbers. But this lady, this old hag who thinks that she's funny enough to be on a podcast making jokes about Erica Kirk, who, I mean, like, I hate to use words like this, but who the fuck do you think you are? You think you have the pull to be able to, like, to spout off like this and get out of it without anybody criticizing you for the fucking washed up old hag that you obviously are, bitter old bitch who's fucking obviously childless, obviously has nobody in your life who fucking gives a shit about you, but you take out all your anger on people like Eric Kirk. Yeah, must suck to be you. Jeez, I wouldn't want to be you. Damn sure. Anyway, so there's a reason I'm going on and on like this, and I don't mean to be. I've been mean today, and I know. I'm sorry. I don't take it back, actually, no, because well, let's see. I was gonna play one more clip, and I think I'll do that because this is kind of a good way to wrap this whole thing up. I won't be able to get to the whole Jesse Lee Peterson thing today, unfortunately, because that's way too long. But this is it's probably a good way to kind of not summarize in itself, but lead to the summary of what it is I'm getting at. And once again, this will kind of tie into both James Comey and the title of the video and everything else that's been happening in the culture lately, and how, you know, we've got too many people out here who are doing nothing but nonstop, constantly, every time it comes up, saying, yeah, I think temperature needs to be turned down on both sides. Yeah, yeah. And they do it every time there's, like, whenever there's some kind of violence, obviously aimed at Donald Trump or his cabinet or somebody involved with the administration, or somebody who just happens to be a prominent conservative. And you get a bunch of leftists out saying, yeah, we need someone to turn the temperature down, starting with the president. Well, hold on. He's the guy who's just been shot at. He's the guy who's just been attempted to be assassinated at least 3 times. I've heard at numbers as high as 8 times so far in this administration. There's been attempts, or plans at least, to attempt to assassinate the president. That is fucking ridiculous. And yet they will posture and get into their obvious condemnation mode when you say a word, one fucking word, about Alex Preddy, Renee Good, Minnesota, these poor families who are being separated at the border, from the border, and sent back with their children who are American citizens. It's like, okay, well, you got your way with the court case, meaning the children who were born here are American citizens. That doesn't mean that you come here, you have a child, and you're an American citizen. Sorry, that's not one of the standards we hold people to. Maybe if you guys had a standard that, I don't know, proved something along the lines of you giving a fuck about our laws, then we would have less cases of people getting killed and maybe even less attempts on the life of the president. But because you guys are dead set on only paying attention to the laws that you think are important to make sure that Donald Trump has to stay in line, has nothing to do with anybody that you support or that, you know, will support your party, which is the most important thing. It's just, it's unfucking believable that this is the way one of the major. That was me on leather. I didn't fart. I'm not Eric Swalwell. I'm telling you, I didn't fart. That was just this chair, leather, new leather. Not really new leather, but like, you know, somewhat new leather. Anyway, let me see if I can find it. Oh, whoops. Let's see. I think, here we go. Okay. So there's actually a couple videos, but there's really one prominent one. So I guess I'll just play that one because the rest are kind of specialized. And bear in mind also, so just I think yesterday or 2 days ago, this was, you know, not long after the last one, there was somebody near the Washington Monument that Secret Service saw that looked suspicious, who they walked up to approach and ask, you know, what he was doing there. He immediately pulled a gun out and started shooting. Luckily, no one with the Secret Service was hurt, and no one was killed. I don't think the shooter was killed. There was, unfortunately, though, and this was really sad, a child, innocent bystander, was hit by the perpetrator in crossfire as the shots were going back and forth. And I'm sure that's not going to make a lick of difference to the leftists who are still hoping every day, as you'll see, that someone does it. And as you'll hear from one of our favorites here, somebody who we haven't featured in quite a while, but somebody who you'll be very familiar with. Let's see if you can pick up a pattern here, because this is in America in 2026. This is disgusting. So. Oh, you know what? Here, hold on. Let's go back here, and no.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence.
He's a punk. He's a dog. He's a pig. He's a con, a bullshit artist. I'd like to punch him in the face.
But Trump is much more dangerous.
Do you think so? A racist, abusive coward who could permanently damage the fabric of our society.
I want to be clear on this. I do not want that man to die. I want to watch him suffer. And I can't watch a dead person suffer.
Because Donald Trump is such an authoritarian, and he must be stopped. He cannot be president.
And you actually wrote about this, and it was a great video.
Turn in your pants.
Someone has to do it. See, when I say that, everyone knows exactly what I mean.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
I like that you're all a part of it. When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
But the guy is a convicted felon or convicted rapist. He's a pedophile.
Republican policies are doing violence to the American people. The Trump administration and Mike Johnson are running a pedophile protection program. That's what they've been doing.
That you're a U.S. citizen, your accent, the color of your skin, that's not the country we live in. You know, you shouldn't have to walk around with papers the way that they did in the early days of Nazi Germany to prove that you belong and that you're not one of them. And that is essentially the kind of country that we're becoming.
I mean, right outside, literally right outside this event,
there were Code Pink protesters who were holding up signs saying death to tyrants. I mean, here's a picture of that.
This is outside the White House.
It's unbelievable.
So, why do I say that is important? Well, if you didn't hear about James Comey getting charged again and the grand jury indicting him, something came up this time, and I had no idea about this, and maybe you guys don't either. And I thought this was kind of an important point to bring up because this was really interesting for me to hear. The whole 86 thing, you might be able to guess something a little different because everybody knows it mostly. I even mentioned this the other day. I remember it the most from Chef Ramsay, who, whether it was Hell's Kitchen or whether it was Nightmare Kitchens or whatever the hell the show was, whenever he got mad, he would say 86 this one. So it got remembered as a restaurant term or a term for a business that was tossing something off of the menu or the items list you could purchase or whatever. There's actually a much older reason for it, which is it's a mob term. And as the title says, the mob term comes from their original idea being 8 miles out, 6 feet under. That's what you do when you whack someone. Now, like I said, I had no idea that was the actual. It's interesting when you hear, the actual origin of like something like Saved by the Bell. Actually, is another interesting one. It's not some crappy show from the '90s that was. Well, at least I thought it was crappy. Sorry, I was too young to really like it. But that actually refers to a time, I don't remember the country, it was somewhere in Europe, where there was a sort of an illness that made people go like catatonic or go into a coma or something. And sometimes they buried people, but they didn't know if they were still alive for sure or not. So they would bury them with a bell that was still above ground, and they would tie a rope with the bell to their finger. And if they woke up in the casket and they were still alive, they would ring the bell and they'd be saved. So that's another one. But in this case, this is a lot more, well, maybe not a lot darker. That's pretty dark too. But at least that one involves saving people. This one involves killing people. Now, I didn't know that. But if you expect me to believe that a fucking FBI director would not know the origin of a mob term for murdering somebody, sorry, I just don't buy it. As wild as that might sound, that an FBI director would know all there is to know about the mob, even one from Comey's era, much later, because you would imagine that, when learning about law enforcement, if he did any learning at all, which I would imagine he did, although not very well, but he did, he learned how to be deceptive as fuck, that was for sure. But he would most certainly have learned about the mob and tactics that took down the mob, without a doubt. So, the credibility of the story that he's told, that he's sticking to, sorry, that's just. And if you and once again, I think people have really forgotten that when somebody bullshits you, somebody lies to you, when somebody tells a bullshit story, and then they try to say, well, yeah, I'm sorry, I just didn't know what. No, that's not why they lied. That's not why they lied. That they have carefully crafted this to deceive you, meaning they have something to hide. Now, we don't know for sure what that is, but we know it's not good, and we know it's related to this. So, whatever it is that turns out to be the decision or the conclusion, at least, that someone would reach, at the bare minimum, you can't take Comey at his word. We know that. We know that from fucking Russiagate. We know that from, once again, all of the... We know that from the second impeachment. We know that from literally all of its rhetoric since the beginning of the Trump administration and even before it. I mean, we know how he feels, and now we know he lied about what about his initial story about this whole thing, because, like I said, there is no way in hell he just was looking down and thought, oh, that's really clever. Like I said, the FBI, the mob, the work that was done to dismantle the mob by the FBI, there's no fucking way in hell that James Comey, the former director of the FBI, would not know about the term 86 used by the mob for when they're going to kill somebody, and think that putting that out on a beach is going to be interpreted any other way than we need to get rid of Donald Trump. If he's going to tie 47 directly, automatically, without any question, to Donald Trump, obviously that's Donald Trump, then 86, well, there's not too many other explanations for it. And it sure as hell isn't just the innocent restaurant term that his wife said. Although, well, I'll just close on this. It could be worse. It could be something else.
That's 8.
Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Oh, boy. I will say, it feels good to finally be back. I will be back again as soon as I can, although I would expect it to be Friday, because I'm going to need my sleep tomorrow. I'm going to be exhausted. But in any case, I will talk to you hopefully by then. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a good one, and I will see you next time. Peace.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. And we will leave you with a... I can't do it. Okay. We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live.